Let's get started here. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Alex Turetsky, and I'm the digital coordinator with Annex Business Media, publishers of OHS Canada, and I will be your moderator for today. Before I introduce our speakers, I just want to take care of a few housekeeping items. As always, this webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent to all registrants 24 hours after the conclusion of the webinar. As the audience, you will be in listen-only mode as our speakers answer questions and give their presentation. With all that out of the way, I would like to introduce our speakers for today, Dylan Street, industry expert at Alcumus, and Larry Jones, the vice president of LEDCOR. I'd like to thank both of you so much for being here, and let's get into the conversation. So let's start with the big question. The goal of today's conversation is to identify ways to improve safety with your contractors. Larry, I'm going to go to you first for this one. How does LEDCOR ensure the contractors on its job sites are working safely?
All right, thank you, Alex. So we have a contractor management standard as part of our HS&E management system that sets the minimum expectations for each of our businesses to use. In the standard, there's 4 sections, and the first one being pre-qualification. This is where we look at the contractor safety performance and processes to completely safe the work. We evaluate the information provided to us from the requirements we have set and provide a risk rating for the contractor and complete a gap analysis to those expectations. We do utilize, contractor pre-qualification management tools like Cumulus to understand the potential risks with selecting contractors. And then the next phase is the pre-mobilization stage. And this is where we meet with the contractor to discuss the risk rating and if there's any gaps and how we can work together to close them. We also introduce them to their LEDCOR designate. And this person is a competent LEDCOR employee who has been delegated the opportunity to be the single point of contact for the contractor. Also, if there's any certification requirements for the work being done, this is the time when we would verify that and actually want to see them. And then the next phase would be is when we're actually doing the work, and this is the monitoring phase. And so each LEDCOR operating group has to develop a task calendar for that LEDCOR designate to complete based on that risk rating. And these tasks can include, timelines of when the designate needs to be present on site with the contractor. And some of the other things would include like toolbox talk participation, reviewing hazard assessments in the field, approval and review of the contractor's preparedness in what we call life critical risk activities. Some organizations would call this SIF, serious injury and fatality incidents. Inspection requirements based on for all the high risk work if the contractor happens to be doing any. And we want them to be participating in any investigations and completing evaluations of the contractor supervision relating to safety commitment. And then after the work's done, we would do a post-performance review where we conduct a performance review of that contractor's performance while working for us, and then we provide feedback and recognition or correction to the contractor.
Awesome. Thank you, Larry. Dylan, do you want to weigh in at all on how Alcumus ensures the contractors on its job sites are working safely?
Well, Alcumus, provides some of those tools like Larry was talking about, and I think every business is unique. So being able to use them independently or together so that you have that continual feedback from pre-qualification all the way to post-job evaluation is so important.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, guys. Dylan, I'm going to stay on you for this one. What are some of the common problems you see with contractors on job sites?
Okay, so I obviously can't speak for everyone, but generally I think there's common challenges people deal with when they're working with contractors, which then lead to problems on the job site. And I would say there's 3 common problems. One is lack of a standardized process, or you either have limited resources to pre-qualify and manage contractors. And then the third being ineffective reporting or transparency of data that you collect. So for the first one, lack of standardized processes, the number one thing we hear from our customers time and time again is that they're in a spot where they don't necessarily have a standardized process. So they start off maybe employing 10 contractors at one site, and then all of a sudden they're working with 50 contractors across multiple sites. And then it continues to grow and grow. And now every site is kind of operating and doing things slightly different. And this creates a problem. And then this problem starts to manifest itself in a lack of visibility of what's going on across business units. And then for lack of standardized resources, or sorry, lack of resources to pre-qualify and manage contractors, almost every person you talk to will tell you that they either have a health and safety manager or an operations person assigned to help manage this administrative task. And if you're doing it in-house, you're maybe using Excel or Word or pen and paper, but they have very limited time to not only, onboard the contractors into your program, but also re-qualifying them year over year and making sure that the contractors are still okay and still safe to come to work. And then if you have, limited visibility through these challenges, your ability to report on it is not very good. And we know how important reporting is to senior management to be able to move from a reactive stance to a proactive stance and make better business decisions. So these common challenges that's very difficult to manage, hundreds, hundreds of contractors lead to problems on the job site, like allowing contractors on site without proof of health and safety requirements, or you have multiple spreadsheets and data silos across your business, and just a general lack of transparency into the contractor's work activities.
That's awesome. Thank you. Larry, would you say that those are three of the most common mistakes that you'd see?
Yeah, I think, and I would add to one, probably from the client side. One of the things we think at the beginning is, well, they're a contractor in a particular business, so we make an assumption they're subject matter experts. And a lot of times that's where we learn they're not. And I think this goes back to the lack of process that was mentioned earlier. It's one of the things that we've learned, that we really got to spend time, that face time, to make sure we're verifying that they are actually experts. And if they're not, we really got to work with them to make sure they understand that working safely is a priority.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Larry, another one for you here. What can you do to help your clients improve if they aren't meeting minimum expectations? So for example, what do you do when you see someone not on your team who's working in an unsafe manner?
Yeah, so I almost see that as two questions, because Ledcor works for clients, and plus we hire contractors. And sometimes our clients don't meet the work at a level that we would expect. So I think one of the things from that perspective, we really try to focus on getting our people to do it the Ledcor way. And so we need you to follow our process, no shortcuts, because sometimes if the client has a lower standard, we sometimes have the practice of defaulting to a lower standard. And so one of the challenges for us is to build the process so that we're doing the check and balances, like I talked about earlier with the gold standard audit, to make sure that our projects and work sites are committing to that expectation that we have set as an organization. And when contractors, when we're working with contractors to help them improve, we go back to that that pre-qualification piece, because sometimes, we hire very sophisticated contractors, and we also hire not so sophisticated contractors based on the work being done. And so we have a person internally that works with contractors to develop a fit for purpose program that we need them to safely execute the work. And he'll actually assist them, in developing that program, or we will work with them to introduce them to the the contractor pre-qualification management tool that we may be using on that project. And then this person works with the businesses, where some of our clients require us to participate in certain contractor management tools, and all of our contractors are also required to participate in that in that tool, sorry. And so with it, the client wants access into there to be able to see the results so that we're picking the best subcontractors we possibly can get. And then where we don't have that requirement, our person will work with that small contractor to build a program that best fits the fit for purpose work that they do. And often these types of contractors are typically, folks that are local to the community, and they may have the equipment but don't have programs. And an example of that is, we do highway maintenance, and this is where we can get a local farmer, and that would partner with us to mow the ditches on the highways that we maintain. And in the pre-mobilization phase, we would evaluate the contractor's performance and process. And if there is any gap, we try to work with them. And even to the point where we would require them to follow our program, because if they don't have one, or the one they have is very deficient to our expectation, we would, where we have that knowledge and experience on the task, we might require them to follow it. And examples of that could be like energy isolation, where you got lockout tagout, or confined space injury would be another example of that. And in the monitoring piece, we have expectations where our leaders, our HSE teams, and that lead core designate, they're out there, they're observing the work being done, and participate with the contractors to ensure they're walking the talk. And if they're not, we want to encourage them to stop the work and make sure that there's a clear understanding of what it takes to safely execute the work. And then in that post evaluation, our goal is to always have the opportunity to provide recognition for the great performance they did. But there's also sometimes we've got to bring the senior leadership of the contractor company in, because they're just not getting it. And so our intent is to work with them, to improve their performance. But if there's a lack of commitment from the leadership, or through their experience, they're just not demonstrating improvement, there are times when we do have to end the relationship.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Larry. Is there anything you want to add on to that, Dylan?
No, I think Larry's bang on. That was good.
Perfect. All right. So Dylan, then, what are some of the potential blind spots that organizations may encounter within their network of contractors? And how can they identify and address them before they turn into injuries or accidents?
Okay, so that's obviously a loaded question, because there's so many pieces that make up the full contractor management program. We could probably talk for hours about different pieces and where they all fit in, but I think I'll focus my answer on where I think the biggest opportunity is, and that's in pre-qualification. So if anyone's looking to get started or kind of make an improvement, pre-qualification is really the foundation of everything. It's everything you can do to make sure you're vetting and working with qualified, competent contractors before they even come and step foot on site, right? So what I noticed is a lot of the times, most companies, not all, but a lot of companies, their pre-qualification program is crap. And what I mean by that, we collect insurance and worker compensation at best, and that's on a good day. And then when you look into it a little bit further, you realize that the insurance, in fact, was collected in 2019, and then it hasn't been updated since. So, and I think if our goal is to create an environment where we are proactive and not reactive, we need to have a much better pre-qualification program in place. So think about if you were to hire a full-time employee, would you hire someone first without ensuring that they have the right skills, licenses, and training? Probably not. So why would hiring a contractor be any different? And it's no wonder that recordable incidents are 3 to 4 times higher with contractors than they are with full-time employees. So to address this, what does a good pre-qualification program look like? I think in a nutshell, the very first step, which sounds simple, but in practice it can be challenging, is to actually just create a consolidated database or consolidated list of all your contractors. So step one is you need to actually be able to know who you're working with. And then step 2 is to develop a thorough questionnaire, to collect all the information that's required, general information, health and safety, financial, quality, ESG, etc. Anything else. And this shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all questionnaire. It should be dynamic and take into consideration the size, location, and work activities of this specific contractor and what they're going to be doing for you on site. And then the third step, like Larry was talking about, is to actually review the information for accuracy that was sent in. So you don't want to just collect a bunch of paperwork and say you're good. You actually want to make sure that what they've sent in has met, legislative minimums for their work activities. And, what you expect from a 2-person company is a lot different than what you'd expect from a 400-person company. And then the 4th step, I would say, is to be able to effectively monitor critical documents. So that's something like your insurance or your worker compensation. So depending on which province you are in Canada, they all expire at different times, but being able to proactively notify your contractors prior to expiry to go in, make sure they upload a new COI. That way you make sure that there's no sort of gaps in coverage while they're working for you, because you don't want to collect a certificate today and then it expires tomorrow and you don't know that. And then the last and final step is to be re-qualifying your contractors annually. So I think there's the annual requalification of contractors where you do a general, safety, desktop audit, all that kind of stuff, and then continuously monitoring the critical documents that have expiry dates.
Awesome. Thanks, Dylan. Is there anything you want to add on to that, Larry?
Yeah, I think the one thing I would add, that wasn't mentioned was relationships. Sometimes, our clients or sometimes leadership inside your own organization will get you to work with a contractor that hasn't gone through the normal process. And so one of the things that, at times this really puts onus on our leadership to have the courage to make sure, like, to hold them accountable to the process of contractor management. Because we've even ran into situations where, that contractor hired by the client and we're told to manage. Sometimes when they've had an incident, you have to, they don't think it's a big deal. We do, and they'll go run to the client to try to get you off their back. But it's that leader having the courage to stay to the process and ensure that, they are doing what they need to do and taking no shortcuts. And I think that's another difficult thing leaders have to deal with. And I think it's a challenge for, upper management, to really, really support those people and have that courage and say, no, this isn't right. We're going to do it the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. Larry, I'm going to stay with you here. So let's talk a little bit. You just mentioned senior leadership. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Since you're in that seat, how do you get the upper management ranks to buy into safety programs for contractors?
Yeah, so for the last 12 years, I've been with COR, and, and I must say, getting buy-in at the top of the organization has been easy here, but sadly, our founder, William Leddy, lost his life from a workplace incident while, touring a site with his 2 sons. And our chairman, Dave Lady, is one of William's sons who was present that day. The event is part of every employee's orientation, and you hear directly from Dave on his importance of safety. In the last couple of years, to maintain that upper management buy-in to safety internally, we have, in the last couple of years, we've been transitioning from just looking at, COR employee safety performance to including employee and contractor safety performance as one measure of success for our projects and work sites. Monthly, our operating group leaders are required to present the total safety performance to the board, and twice a year I present to the board to verify the results and discuss continual improvement plans that, the operating groups have put forward to improve their safety performance. While we still measure common lagging indicators like total recordable incident rate or frequency, we are measuring other performance such as life critical risk audits to ensure that we're implementing those processes and controlling stuff that can kill you. And we expect our leaders to participate with the contractors in the field. This way we get a better understanding of, the contractor's culture and commitment to safety. And, this also helps the contractor understand LEDCOR's risk tolerance level in safety and getting the work done correctly. And we also have a program we call the gold standard audit. And this is where our projects are audited, to ensure they're meeting the expectations set by the operating group and the organization on the implementation of those expectations. And contractor management is one of the 26 sections of the audit being evaluated. And the results are also shared with the board. But not all my work has been with LEDCOR. And I know companies, you work for are not likely in the business of making safety. They're in the business of making money. So one of the measures I learned about was, measuring losses. We do not plan, like people don't plan when they're starting their business. They don't plan for losses. And every time they have one, it's a loss of profit. And to make it up, the business has to make a lot of effort and find an extra work to make up for those losses. And so in our investigation process, we ask about the dollars lost and report to leadership on those losses. And this creates a lot of interest with senior leadership, and it will assist in developing areas of focus for continual improvement.
That's awesome. Thanks, Larry. So then Dylan, on the flip side of that, how do you create a program that is beneficial to contractors and is also embraced by them, not just checked off because they have to in order to work on a specific job site?
Yeah, that's a good question, because obviously we need contractors. They're critical to our operations, whether it's, specialty trades or even things like project-based or seasonal increases in demand. Contractors, when they're working for you, should feel like they're a part of your company and a part of your program, and that it's helping them improve and get better. So being able to provide them with resources to help them improve, constructive feedback, access to training. So I think even something, as straightforward as an orientation, being able to deliver that effectively and be able to monitor who's done it and who has not. And then when contractors are doing well, we should be able to have a way to recognize them for that and promote those contractors internally to ultimately, help them win more work with us or help them grow their business. And just the same way as you want your employees to be happy when they're working for you, you also want your contractors to be happy and growing. Absolutely.
Perfect. I got a question here. I'm going to pose it for the both of you. So whoever wants to go first can just take the reins. The administrative burden of contractor pre-qualification can be a challenge. What advice / best practices can you share to make this easier while maintaining high safety standards?
So I'll take the lead on that. The contractor pre-qualification can be a lot of work. And, in answering all the questions your clients ask, and sometimes, it's exhausting and you wonder whether it's worth the effort. But when you go through it, most of the questions being asked are due diligence questions, and to manage your own liabilities. And so you should have those requirements for each of the questions asked, and even more difficult are those questions that may be client specific. And, and I think one of the things that I've learned through this is that, I constantly have to remind myself, that the client may have had incidents that either they're trying to prevent from happening, or if they do happen, they've done their due diligence. And so this is their opportunity to make sure that they're selecting contractors that really you can't learn from your mistakes because they've already had it and they don't want you to have it. So please kind of appreciate that. For the most important advice, I can give is, live what you say you do. And too many times, I've seen wonderful paperwork and pre-quals, right? And the work being done, it doesn't align with what's written. And so, I have received resumes of fully qualified personnel, and they've been posted and all that good stuff. And then the people that show up on site, they're not the people that were presented, and they were hired right off the street for that work. And that really sets a poor tone for the relationship. And I think if you're shorthanded, it's and you got to do that. You got to be transparent, because we can then help. It seems hard sometimes to do the right thing, but in doing the right thing, it makes for committed employees, trust with your employees, plus your clients, and not having incidents, because you've got those processes in place and qualified people. You're in the best position to have success in your business.
Thanks, Larry. Dylan, you want to weigh in there?
I guess the only thing I would add, if from a hiring client perspective, I think you should spend a good amount of time upfront planning and building your contractor program to ensure it includes everything you need, but try and remove yourself from the actual administrative burden parts of it, like chasing the contractors for the paperwork and uploading it manually, things like that. Like, there's technology that can automate that part of the process for you, which will then free up a lot more of your time from the administrative parts, so you can focus more on the relationship stuff, like Larry was talking about, being in the field, participating in toolbox talks, and just generally more value-added important tasks, rather than sitting behind a computer emailing your contractors.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you, guys. Dylan, I'm going to stay with you for right now. What metrics and tools are available to safety professionals, things like reports or data, to demonstrate they have control over contractor risk and to ensure compliance with all applicable safety rules?
Well, I guess it depends what you're talking about, but it would be a good opportunity to maybe plug Alchemist's contractor management platform, because that's basically exactly what we do. We help hiring clients demonstrate a high level of due diligence to health and safety standards when you are bringing on contractors. So the collecting and reviewing, displaying of data for contractors in real time, so you know exactly what's going on within your network. And whether that's for pre-qualification, employee management, so sending out training and managing, through e-learning and things like that, specific task management, performance evaluation. There's a lot of great features. So I think if anyone was interested in that, wants to talk more, we can connect on LinkedIn or send me an email. But yeah, absolutely, there's a lot of tools that people should be leveraging to make sense of data and have better control and visibility over the contractors working on site.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Dylan. Larry, going to shoot it over to you. I have a question here. It says, I'm a contractor out of Ontario. I see there is a contractor management component to the new COR 2020. What do you know about this, and can you speak to this at all?
All right. So I've lived this. And so, with all the core programs, and, I've had the privilege of having responsibility of being a certifying partner in Alberta for the core program in Alberta. And so, the intent of that was to make sure contractors or companies have safety programs. And so long time comes Ontario and with their core program, and they've just updated it to make sure that, companies have a management system for health and safety, and contractor management is part of that. And so interestingly, we did it when this was getting announced, and plus the desire for ISO 45001, this is what triggered our rewrite of our HSE management system, which include the contractor management standard. So we we used the tool that's provided by the IHSA in Ontario to build that contractor management piece. And so, when you look at it, it's very different than a program. And so it's one of the things, but when you go through it, things like, where you have, the organization, and it has to communicate to their contractors and their service providers when there's been changes. I mean, that's a great practice. And so there's all kinds of good things in there that if you're a contractor, you would want your client to tell you. But it is a significant change from just writing a manual or a program. It's a lot of work, but I think it evolves health and safety a little bit for sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Larry. Dylan, got one here for you. What do you do when a contractor hires subcontractors or wants to hire subcontractors?
Yeah, that's a good question because it's very common. Yeah. So what happens is that, a hiring client hires a contractor and then they go further subcontract that work out to someone else. So we call that, a tier 1, 2, 3 contractor. And traditionally people have only really been able to focus on that first tier of contractor because they don't necessarily know if it gets subcontracted out to someone else. So I think the most important part is, having communication, educating your contractors that, hey, we don't mind if you subcontract other people, but they do need to be pre-qualified to the same expectations that we would with anyone else. And so you just need to be able to communicate that and then have visibility to it. Because what would happen is, let's say I'm a contractor and I hire 3 people, 2 of them may be qualified, no problem, but the third one might need some extra hand holding, right? So having visibility is the most important, and just being aware, holding them accountable just like anyone else, so that you can get in front of it and step in where you need to.
Awesome. Thank you, Dylan. I got another one here. This can be for both of you or whoever wants it. How often would you suggest requalifying contractors that work for me on site?
Yeah, for us, it's, we do it annually because, we do have requirements to make sure we're monitoring, their WCB rates, making sure they have insurance, so there's, I think, that's one of the things that we really focus on. But one of the things we do is as we build those relationships, I think we don't do a deep dive into those ones we've had long-term relationships on or with, and so, because they've been communicating all their changes as we've been working with them and things like that. And I think it was mentioned earlier about, when you have those kind of relationships, those are the kind of people those are kind of companies you want to have be given the work. And so that's one of the things, a bit of a recognition piece. So you don't have to reapply every time you want to go to the next project or work site.
Awesome. Thanks, Larry. Dylan, anything on your end?
No, I agree. I think an annual requalification is good practice, and then also just monitoring those critical documents like I mentioned before, like, being able to know if an insurance paper expired. Yeah.
Beautiful. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Got a couple more here for you. Larry, this one's for you. You talked earlier about getting senior leadership to buy in. We don't get a lot of FaceTime with our senior leaders because they're rarely on our job sites. How should we approach someone at a VP level about safety concerns we're seeing? Are they generally open to these kind of calls?
Yeah, I think so, because, the interesting piece is that, senior leadership, I've never really seen ones that don't care about safety, but I think sometimes, the messages can get lost as you work down the org chart, right? Like it just because what I learned, and in my background, I actually come from an operational background and I moved into safety. And so part of my learning was, when I was in operations, it was always about cost and production, right? And so, those are constant stressors. And so one of the things I had to learn was, from a safety perspective is I had to really learn to not put that in the field. But I know, and don't let the person that's operating that piece of equipment feel that, because the machine can only go so fast. And so that was one of the things, I had to learn. And I know that, I've never met a senior leader that doesn't care about safety, but when you think of the vast majority of the success of the organization is profits and building stuff on time, on budget. And so when things are off, it's, there's lots of meetings around that, but I think it's, the skill set is, you got to really work hard not to leave that in the boardroom and not take that outside. So that's the challenge. And for those people, I think the one thing I would say based on the question is that give that executive, that VP, the opportunity to do the right thing. And so I think sometimes people are afraid to talk to them or bring the question forward because they're too busy. And I think that's one of the things that I learned in my life. Like when I was a director, everybody talked to me. And then when I became a vice president, I think for some people, they thought I was too busy and then stopped talking to me. And I'm still me, and it didn't change. So I think we want people to talk to us for sure.
No, absolutely. That's very well put. Thank you. Got another one here. This one can be for either of you. What would you say to a supervisor who doesn't want to stick his or her nose into someone else's business? For example, they see something unsafe, but it's someone not on their team.
Yeah, I can. So on that one, one of the things that we do, we have an intervention program. And that's one of the key things in our orientation about, we want you to speak up, and we actually make a point of recognizing those people that do that. And then I think from a supervisor perspective, it goes back to, is somebody going to get angry at me if I speak up? And so one of the things that we've been doing is trying to really, the person, when someone has the courage to come to you, no matter how silly the question is, somebody came to you with courage. And so you really got to thank them for it. And then take the time to explain to them, why you're doing what you do. And sometimes people don't realize what they're doing, and somebody coming and having the courage to talk to them, it's amazing how many times you get somebody thanking them because they didn't see it. And so that is one of the things that's hard to do. I know I went through that as a supervisor, but the piece I would say is that, if you didn't say something, the regret will eat you if something does go wrong and you did know.
That's perfect. Thank you, Larry. Dylan, anything on your end?
I guess so my brother's a plumber in Ontario, and I've kind of talked to him about this, just about like peer-to-peer noticing things that maybe the guy beside you is doing something sketchy that he shouldn't be doing. And the way they used to do it was like, walking over to the clipboard and filling something out, and then people would look at you and be like, hey man, don't rat me out. Like,
Right.
So you don't want to be seen doing that, right? So they developed something where you could do it discreetly and anonymously, so you can still get that out there, but no one's gonna, call you out on it or whatever, just because that might be something like a stigma on the job site. So being able to do it anonymously can sometimes benefit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you, Dylan. All right, this is the last question that I have for you guys here. So you both can weigh in. In your opinion, is it okay to tell a contractor to leave a job site if they're acting in an unsafe manner? If so, who should deliver that message?
I mean, I can go first and keep it brief, but I think absolutely you should speak up. And to Larry's point earlier, a lot of the times you may work with contractors that do look good on paper, but once you've been working with them for a little while, you've noticed maybe they're rude, or maybe they're always showing up late, or whatever the problem might be. So being able to address that problem, leave that on their file so that you know that, you know, if someone else or from another department's going to consider working with them, that they're at least made aware that there's been challenges in the past. But absolutely, that initial first step of, you know, calling out unsafe behavior is so super important.
Awesome. Thanks, Dylan.
Yeah,
Larry?
and just to add to that, you know, it's like in my experiences, I've had, you know, where the contractor company during the pre-qual, you know, part of the contractor management program, you know, just had terrible results. And it was interesting because I was going to take them off the list, and it was one of our supervisors came up to me and said, you know, listen, we have this crew that works for this that organization, has been with us for 7 years and has been incident free and follows our processes and loves working with us. You know, please don't take that company off. And so it was, you know, so I said, okay, well, you know, I looked into it. It's true. Everything was true. And from the old safety model, trust but verify, and you know, and they continued, that crew continued. So we had actually restriction. We brought their senior leadership in, had the conversation about it, you know, and we were able to maintain that relationship. But we made point of putting more accountability on the senior leadership to make sure they're recognizing those employees that they were having that had the great performance with us. I think, you know, and then the other piece, you know, make sure, you know, kicking people off site, you know, I think should almost be a last resort in the context. Have we done what we needed to do to help them be successful? And sometimes we, you know, we didn't do what we should have been doing. And, you know, in working with them, I think if we can really elevate a culture of a contractor working with us by being a partner with them. I think that is a real positive opportunity for your organization to have somebody that could be a real ally down the road. But if they don't respond, yeah, you sometimes you got to ask them to leave, for sure.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I believe that is all of the questions that we have for you guys today. So I just want to once again thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here with us. We really appreciate it. On behalf of everyone at Annex Business Media, OHS Canada, and at Alchemist Cognibox, I want to wish everyone a safe rest of your day. Thanks, Larry, and thanks, Dylan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Bye.